There comes a point in every person's life where the pursuit of peace outweighs the need to please. It doesn't happen all at once, it's subtle. At first, you may feel a tightness in your chest around certain people, a weariness after a conversation, a growing desire for silence instead of small talk. And eventually, you begin to realize it's not the world that's getting louder, it's your soul that's finally speaking up. That voice inside you is not asking for attention, it's asking for rest, it's asking for space, and most importantly, it's asking you to choose yourself. Choosing peace doesn't mean cutting people off in a blaze of ego or drama. It doesn't mean that you suddenly stop caring. In fact, it often means you care deeply, so deeply that you no longer want to exist in relationships where your care is exploited or misunderstood. It means you've realized that love and sacrifice are not always the same thing. You can love someone and still need distance. You can love someone and still know that your peace can't survive in their presence. That doesn't make you heartless, that makes you honest. One of the most damaging stories we tell ourselves, especially as women, nurturers, or empaths, is that choosing peace over people is selfish. But let's pause right there. Where did we learn that? Who taught us that sacrificing our well-being for someone else's comfort was noble? And who benefits from that belief? It's not selfish to want peace, it's survival. It's a reclaiming of your right to exist as a whole person, not a fractured version of yourself molded to keep everyone else happy. It's self-respect, plain and simple. It's the courage to say, I matter too. And that courage doesn't come without cost. Choosing peace often comes with loss. Sometimes it's the loss of relationships you thought would last forever. Sometimes it's the loss of your role as the fixer, the reliable one, the yes person. And in the beginning, it may feel disorienting. You may even feel guilty. But here's the truth. Guilt is not always a moral compass. Sometimes guilt is just the echo of old conditioning. Sometimes guilt shows up when you do something new, like respecting yourself. Brene Brown says daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. And that's what choosing peace really is. It's drawing boundaries where there were none. It's stepping off the stage of performative connection and stepping into the quiet steadiness of your own presence. It's no longer twisting yourself into 1,000 shapes to be palatable to people who were never meant to hold your heart in the first place. Let's be clear, peace doesn't mean avoiding conflict or being passive. Peace is active. Peace is earned. Peace is the byproduct of integrity, of saying what you mean, doing what you say, and aligning your actions with your values. When you choose peace, you're choosing a life where your nervous system isn't constantly in fight or flight. You're choosing clarity over chaos, simplicity over drama, and inner harmony over external validation. And when you begin to live this way, not everyone will understand. Some will call you distant. Some will say you've changed. Some may even accuse you of being cold or detached. But here's what they're really saying. I can no longer control how much of yourself you give me, and that's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for managing other people's expectations of you, especially when those expectations come at the cost of your peace. You are allowed to be a whole person. You are allowed to be someone who chooses quiet over chaos, boundaries over burnout, solitude over shallow connection. When you choose peace, you begin to attract different energy. You start recognizing the people who meet you with softness, who honor your space, who don't demand emotional labor for their comfort. These are the ones who see you, not just what you give them. These are the ones who are not offended by your healing. And slowly, you realize peace was never just about silence or solitude. It was about alignment. It was about finding. One of the hardest truths to come to terms with is that not all relationships are meant to last forever. And yet, so many of us live with the weight of the opposite belief. We think if someone has been in our life for a long time, if they've seen us grow, fail, fall in love, or walk through pain, they deserve to stay. We equate history with compatibility, and we confuse time invested with value sustained. But the truth is, some relationships were only ever meant to occupy a season, not a lifetime. This doesn't mean those relationships weren't real or didn't matter. In fact, some of the most meaningful connections we ever have may be the ones that eventually run their course. They served a purpose. They taught us something. They left fingerprints on our hearts, but they weren't meant to stay. There's no failure in that. It's simply part of the human experience. Beautiful, complex, and often messy. The difficulty lies in the way we're taught to frame relationships in society. We're conditioned to believe that longevity equals success, that if a friendship or relationship ends, someone must have messed up. Someone must be to blame. But Brene Brown talks often about the power of vulnerability, of embracing discomfort to grow. And in that spirit, we must admit to ourselves that not every relationship can evolve with us. Some were built for who we were, not who we're becoming. Growth changes us. When you start healing, when you begin stepping into your own power, when you develop healthier boundaries or clearer values, it's not uncommon to look around and realize that certain people no longer fit into your life in the same way. You begin to crave depth over drama, clarity over chaos, and honesty over obligation. And that shift, it doesn't make you ungrateful or disloyal. It makes you aware, self-aware, soul-aware. Some people don't grow alongside us, and that's okay. It doesn't make them wrong or bad. But when a relationship begins to feel like a weight rather than a source of support, that's something to notice. If being around someone constantly triggers anxiety, self-doubt, or emotional exhaustion, those aren't signs of a deep connection. Those are signs of a disconnection from your own well-being. And staying in those relationships out of guilt or fear of being the bad person doesn't serve anyone, not them and certainly not you. We've all been taught that it's noble to stay, that loyalty means putting up with anything, even if it costs us our mental health. But maybe real loyalty is about staying true to yourself first. Maybe it's about asking, does this relationship still nourish me, challenge me in healthy ways, make space for my growth? If the answer is no, then love doesn't always have to look like staying. Sometimes love looks like walking away gently, without resentment, simply because the path forward is no longer shared. What makes this even more complicated is when the relationship in question is with someone we once depended on, emotionally, socially, or spiritually. Maybe they were your rock during a tough time, or maybe they were your person when no one else was. That history makes it painful to consider letting go, but the past doesn't always justify the present. And honoring what someone meant to you doesn't require sacrificing who you're becoming. We can grieve relationships that end without vilifying the people in them. We can say, this mattered, you mattered, but this version of me needs something different now. That's not cruelty, that's integrity. That's having the courage to choose peace